Hello and welcome to another edition of the Steelers Depot live stream for this Monday. I am Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Joining me as always, partner in crime, Bryan here on the start of the 2025 NFL Combine week. We'll answer your questions as we'll hear from GM Omar Khan on Tuesday and then get ready for the on-field workouts really beginning Thursday and running through the weekend. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Monday to you. Doing well, obviously, like most people, excited about the Combine getting underway and going to be a busy Tuesday for us with Omar Khan and the several media sessions that he's going to have. And, we get the fun aspect of tracking the live on-field stuff once that gets underway. And we've got three people sitting in Indianapolis right now getting ready to go to all the interviews that happened during the week. So exciting time for the site and fans, and just ready to get it underway.
And more quarterback buzz this time, and more recently, Matthew Stafford. Those rumors are picking up and turning into some sort of tangible speculation that he could be dealt, although there's still skepticism that will actually come to pass. Dave and I discussed it on Monday's episode of the Terrible Podcast. I'm sure we'll get some questions about that and address those in the chat. As always, Dave and I here until 8 p.m. Eastern Time, answering as many of your Steelers questions as possible. If you want a guarantee of your question being asked and answered, you can send us a super chat. No obligation. We appreciate that, and you will move to the front of the line. At the least, if you guys could just like the stream, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out the site on screen, SteelersDepot.com. As Dave said, we got three guys, boots on the ground in Indy right now for the Combine: Ross McCorkle, Joe Clark, and Jonathan Heitritter. And so we'll have live coverage there from Indianapolis throughout the week. All right, let's get to the questions here. Let's start with Brian Junk, who says, do I remember correctly, as a rookie, Najee came into camp at 225 pounds and later lost 15 pounds to get faster? That sounds more like a Le'Veon Bell thing. Najee played at 240 really until this year, and he dropped a couple pounds into that 233, 235 range. So you might be thinking of L. Bell, Brian.
Yeah, that trying to jog my memory when it comes to him, but it does sound like Le'Veon Bell was the one that came in a little bit heavier and then proceeded. Was it the next season or the season after that with Le'Veon Bell?
I was going to clarify. It was his sophomore year that he dropped weight. He played heavy in that 240 range, I think, his rookie year, and then was kind of down to 225 after, and that was pretty common. James Conner dropped weight his second year, but Harris stayed basically at his size until 2024 in an effort to get more explosive, which we actually saw the first half of the season, and then it went away like the rest of the offense down the stretch.
Right. And obviously, the running game just did not deliver the amount of really even, Jaylen Warren had a pretty good percentage, I think, of 10-yard runs on the season. What did I say? That was something like 14% or something like that. But look, where the real stealing in the NFL are those 20-yard runs, or a high percentage of those 10 yards or longer runs. And regardless of what happens, with whatever direction they go this offseason, with the offensive line and you getting Fautano back in this thing and having a year underneath the belt of Mason McCormick and Zach Frazier, I mean, you got to expect the dividends to start paying off with the physicality of the offensive line. We've got to see this team, regardless of the quarterback, regardless of the running back, they've got to run the football better.
They do, no question. Brian's follow-up is, would it be more advantageous to draft a running back on day 2 at that 225 to 230 pounds and have them add another 10 with the idea to have them continually slam into the opposing defense because of the subpar blocking and, basically go back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust? I think adding weight is tough to do. Projection, how much slower does a guy get? How easily can he add that weight? Does he have the frame to support it? So I think Pittsburgh would be looking for some more explosiveness and big playability out of running back should they be looking for one this offseason.
I don't care if has Alex Kozora's measurables. I want to see those 20-yard runs. Alex, what's your combine measurements?
Oh, it's Tutu Atwell's putting me to shame.
5'3", 5'4". What are you?
5'4". Come on, give me a 505 4.
505 5, maybe.
Yeah.
505 5/8, and you can't go but what 142 pounds.
Well, first of all, let's go 5:05.5 to let me round up to 5'6" confidently on the
All right.
bio, and then I think I weighed in today. Weighed myself 134. I think is what I
Okay.
was at, which is
All
heavy
right.
for me.
All right. You're a little bit on the line. I'm not sure how how you'd be after first contact.
There would be no second contact. I will put it that way. All
Well,
right.
what's your 40? Could you run it under 6?
You
You
know, I'd
think?
like to try under 6. Yeah, I could do under. Rich Eisen can almost do under
Okay.
6. My
Can,
goal, if I ran a 40, I'd want to go under 5. Would be my goal.
all right. I would love to be able to run it at 6. I think at my age, I would probably be more apt to run the 20-yard dash with my ankles the way that they are. But look, all joking aside, we just got to see more explosiveness from these running backs moving forward.
Yeah, we do. The big play ability for the run game has not been there, and that's not all in the backs. It is second and third level blocking, the RBIs, as Arthur Smith has referred to it as, and that can improve as well. But certainly, you've been drafting big power backs, and you've been getting big power back results. We should have the Steelers Depot Combine Olympics too, by the way, just to test that out one year.
Jonathan would win that probably.
He's not allowed.
Easily.
He's not allowed to.
He wouldn't be allowed. He's over conditioned for that, I think.
Got a super chat here from MJB33, a $1 super chat. Appreciate that. Trying to see if you had a question in the chat somewhere. I don't see it. If I missed it, let me know. If you want to submit one, you certainly can, and we'll get to that. But we appreciate that. Let's now go to Mike Adesso. Hi, guys. As we sit here in Combine Week, still early in the process, are there a few guys in this draft class you both are crushing on? Dave, any early draft crushes?
I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not deep enough yet to really get that deep into crushes and all. But look, I mean, I have been intrigued throughout the college football season of watching a guy like Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I really like the different things that he brings to the table. We're talking about, maybe an offensive player. Obviously, thanks to him providing his own highlight reels on a weekly basis, at the running back position, just watching what all Ashton Genty has done on the field. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound like we're going to get to see him do much of anything at the Combine. I think that news came out earlier today that he's just going to do the interviews and all like that. On the defensive side of football, most of my studies have obviously gone into the defensive line guys up until this point, and it's hard not to be enthralled with guys like Walter Nolan, Oregon's Derek Harmon, who Alex has done a lot of work on so far. Both of the Michigan guys in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant have been very impressive. Darius Alexander out of Toledo, spent a lot of time looking at his film so far. But that's where most of my deeper analysis has gone up until this point. And obviously, I'll start climbing into more of these other position groups past the Combine and learning more about these guys during the Combine.
I'm about 40 full published reports so far, and in terms of the guys that I've reviewed in that sense that I would probably say that I'm crushing on, to use your term, Michael, would probably be 3. Harmon, as you mentioned, Dave, I still think he should and will be in contention for Pittsburgh at number 21, even though he's currently perceived as a maybe late day 1, early day 2 kind of a guy who can't wait to get his measurables, see if he works out at the Combine, and compare that to the other defensive linemen. Had some Leonard Williams in this game was my comp to Harmon. I really like Malachi Moore from Alabama. I think his testing will be important this week, and sometimes we can make too much out of testing. I think that will be important for him. Is he a 4.5s guy? Is he a 4.4s guy? I think he's versatile. He's a good tackler, downhill demeanor. I think he's high character overall. Had that one outburst in the Vanderbilt game, but you talk to or you read stuff on coaches and, whether his makeup, it's overall really good. So I like Moore as a slot safety type at the NFL level, not too dissimilar to his former teammate, Bryan Branch, and Moore might be a little bit bigger and a little more athletic, maybe not quite the cover guy that Branch was. Of course, Will Howard from Ohio State, the quarterback, I'm really high on, my number 3 quarterback in this year's class, and so that's a guy I think that, even for me, who generally does not like quarterbacks past round 1, he's a guy I would consider on day 2. And then just two other names that maybe wouldn't call crushes, but Luther Burden from Missouri. He's popped on tape as I've watched Missouri tape. Haven't watched him specifically to do a detailed report, but he's constantly making plays in an offense that was frankly tough to watch oftentimes this year. And then Azareye'h Thomas, the corner from Florida State. That's a guy I think that I can sit here and say he's going to be a first-round guy post-combine. He's going to crush the combine. He's going to test fantastically. A little raw. I wouldn't say I'm crushing on him, but that's a guy with big-time tools I think will rise throughout this process.
He's one of those guys, too. I think Dane Brugler just released the list of guys that will only be like 20 years old on draft night. And wasn't Thomas listed in that group?
I believe so. I just saw that tweet a little bit ago with like the 6 or 7 names on there. I think he was one of them, yes.
Okay.
And so
that's obviously attractive to teams, not only because of what he is on the field and the upside and all like that, but a guy that you're very likely to get to a second contract, at a really young age as well too.
Agreed. And that's a critical component for those top end draft picks to get that second contract and feel like you're confident that if all goes well in the evaluation process, you're not going to be signing a guy who's 28 on his second contract. MJB from the Super Chat had a question. Any clarity yet on the number of 7th round picks the Steelers have? He says he has it at 3, 225, 231, and 247. I think we are still not 100% sure. The Steelers.com site, Bob Labriola, is saying 2. I think maybe Over the Cap is saying 2 as well. Other outlets, including Tankathon, have said 3, so we'll probably have to wait officially until the NFL releases that. I think after the comp picks come out, but I'm going to work with 2 7th round picks right now, MJB.
Yeah, didn't we go through that exercise a couple last week or so like that and determine that it was 2 7ths?
We had talked about it. I don't know if we had gone through the final determination. He's saying that the 3rd pick was from Washington for William Jackson III, but wasn't all compensation in that deal null and void because of Jackson's injury?
Well, it had conditions, and the conditions weren't met to do that. And I think that's where the confusion with some people are. So I don't think they got that because I don't think the conditions of playing time or whatnot were met because that was a conditional pick.
Right. And ultimately, I don't believe any compensation besides Jackson going to Pittsburgh was ever traded, correct?
Oh, I'll have to pull that up. Didn't I pull that up just recently and screenshot that somewhere? But whatever it was, the conditions weren't met. I know that.
So we're going to
because it was a conditional coming from the other side as well, too.
Right. And so I'm trying to think about how Pittsburgh got a 7th. Was there a pick swap in that deal initially for Pittsburgh to be getting back a 7th, which is what MJB is, I think, implying?
Yeah, but I don't think the conditions were met of that.
Right. So no trade capital moved around besides Jackson going to Pittsburgh and then having the back injury and never playing.
Right.
We'll double check. We'll get confirmation. I'm going to work
I'm
off the
almost
assumption.
positive it's 2.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's where things are at. And again, Steelers.com, I'll defer to them. They're saying 2, and so I will say 2 until told otherwise. Jaden says, should Broderick be left at right tackle and Troy Fautanu be played at left tackle given Broderick's experience at right tackle thus far and Troy's inexperience at right tackle? It just feels like less projection to me. That's fair. There's a case to be made for that. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Pittsburgh really wants Fautanu to be at right tackle. I think their intent is to move Jones over to left tackle. It is harder to talk about because we barely got to see Fautanu this year. 1 preseason game, or really 1/2 of a preseason game, and then 1 game against Denver in week 2. And so if you had a better feel about his development, his comfort or lack thereof at right tackle, I think it's easier to determine that. But my expectation for what will happen, which might be a separate question, but Jones will flip to left tackle to replace Dan Moore Jr.
Yeah, and you go back to some of the things that Omar Khan has said in the past that eventually left tackle for Broderick Jones. Well, I mean, hey, here's the thing. One of the interesting things that we'll be looking for, and hopefully Omar Khan at some point, whether it be in the in the media session with the local media, which I think happens before his his podium interview at the combine. But either way, I would expect him to be asked about that, and maybe we'll learn some clarity. But I'm with Alex. I'm expecting Broderick Jones to go over to left tackle and Fautano to play at right tackle.
Now, I think it's fair to question that, because as the commenter noted, Jones really has now more experience at right tackle than he has at left tackle. So do you want to keep him there? But Jones also was kind of a mess last year. Is that all because of the left tackle, right tackle thing? I don't think so. But if he does feel more comfortable at left tackle, do you give that a shot? I can see the value in that. So it's hard to say. I'm just going to focus on really what the team is going to do more so than what I think should happen, because I don't have a especially strong feeling for it either way.
And obviously, we didn't get to see Fautano play all that much last year either at right tackle.
Right. I do think it's been messy the way Pittsburgh continually moves these offensive linemen around off their college spot, which creates more projection, more uncertainty, more risk in an already inherently risky and uncertain process. It's not helping them. Mike's asking about the Pro Football Network offseason manager. Yeah, I think you had recommended that. Maybe somebody else did too. I looked at it over the weekend. It is thankfully very similar to FanSpeak, which I had used in the past. There's no way to link up the offseason and the draft the way that FanSpeak could. There's a couple other things I wish it had that FanSpeak had that'll make things a little less exciting, but I played around with it enough to know that I will be able to do the mock offseason. It'll be largely the same thing, and so we'll still have fun with it overall, but that seems to be the best thing out there, Mike, so thank you for the recommendation, and we'll make it work. Carl Ward, have you guys studied the top 2 quarterbacks in this class? If so, what's your take on Shedeur Sanders? I believe he's the most pro-ready quarterback. Before we answer that, if you guys, again, could like this stream, subscribe to the channel, check out the site on screen, SteelersDepot.com, would appreciate that. I have not done a dedicated study. I may do it on Sanders. I don't believe the site has profiled Sanders yet. My feel from watching the season is I like Cam Ward more than Sanders. Dave, do you have any feelings one way or the other?
From what the little I've watched about both of those, and obviously Colorado being on, seemed like Colorado was on out here in Vegas a lot later, later in the evenings and on, obviously got to watch a lot of him play more so than I did Cam Ward. And I thought Daniel Jeremiah, had a good synopsis of these two. I think Cam Ward gives you more of the higher ceiling when it comes to his play, whereas maybe a guy like Sanders, at least kind of what the ceiling is with him and the floor kind of already with him. I would rank Ward ahead of Sanders, but in the same breath, Daniel Jeremiah was asked where those two guys would rank if they were in last year's class, and I think he had Ward. What did he say? Ward 4th or 5th, and like Sanders, I don't know, what was it, 7th or 8th or something along those lines. Had both those guys been in last year's class, so that both those guys can obviously, I think both those guys can really sling it. I think there's some questions about Sanders and the overall arm strength if he used to play in colder, windier type conditions. Would he be able to drive the football through the wind? Whereas Ward, I think there's less questions about him. Obviously watched enough of Sanders to see how he is able to create plays, in breakdown situations where that's kind of a plus when it comes to him. Ward, I obviously you have the mobility and all that comes along with Ward. But from where I sit right now, I easily have Ward ranked above Shedeur Sanders.
I do like Sanders' accuracy. He wasn't turnover prone in college. He's tough. It is a slender frame, and you can point to Jaden Daniels and say, well, he made it work, in that regard, and didn't have an issue with it. But I don't think Sanders is where Daniels is at coming out of LSU, not as dynamic and, as you said, kind of the upside conversation. I think Ward has some things to work on as well. But yeah, and kind of my elementary view of it all, because I don't expect either guy to come close to Pittsburgh, even though one of those guys may not be, top 3, top 4 selections, but I would probably give the edge to Ward over Sanders. I think Ward is also not throwing at the combine. I think both Sanders and Ward
Did that come out today?
Rich Eisen had mentioned that, so I don't know exactly the source of that, but seems like the top 2 quarterbacks will just do medical and interviews and not throw, and I assume not run or anything like that.
All right.
Got a $1.99 super chat from Kay Cabrera. We thank you for that. A couple of questions, and I'll read them off here. Why does it seem like you dismiss mid-level players who all-pro on special teams and expect them to be easily replaced? Seems like you don't worry much about special teams until it's a linebacker who doesn't do special teams. Maybe one more comment. Or why do you seem to feel like safety is an easier position to fill? He says, and so I'm not entirely sure on the special teams comment, kind of the source for that. I know we talked about Preston Smith and his lack of special teams value, but I prioritize special teams as somebody whose favorite player of all time is Chidi Iwoma, a special teams demon. I mean, I'm all about that and the value of that, what Miles Killebrew brought, what Tyler Medikevich has brought in recent years. So I'm just not 100% sure kind of the angle of the question. Special teams can certainly be really, really important.
Yeah, I don't understand that as well, too. I wonder if he maybe has us confused with somebody else, because you and I, especially once training camp gets open and get into the preseason, man, we chart and watch all the special team snaps and how many's played, because we know, if anything, we've gotten pushback in the past about saying, man, you guys really give too much credence to special teams when projecting what the 53-man roster. I mean, Alex and I are pro special teams by more so than most, I think, when it comes to that. We should never get accused of not paying too much mind to special teams. So I kind of wonder if he might have us confused with somebody else. And what's the other part of the question there?
Something about why do you seem to feel like safety is an easier position to fill? Again, I'm just not 100% sure what that's in reference to. From. I mean, I think backup safety is a big need for this team, and even that dime backer, that 6th defensive back. So I'm just not entirely sure. If you can clarify, feel free. Maybe there's something I said in the past that I'm just not simply remembering. I don't want to be accusatory, but I mean, I don't know if I've said it's an easier position to fill. And then he says, pay with Miles Killebrew leaving. I assume that's supposed to mean, would you be okay with Miles Killebrew leaving? And I would not. I want Killebrew to remain on this roster for 2025.
Look, it's not the end-all, do-all, but, and especially, I mean, this guy's not, you don't want to get in a situation where Miles Killebrew has to play defensive snaps for you. But he is a very, very solid special teams player. Without a doubt. And, those guys can impact games, and Killebrew has impacted games. So, no, I mean, I hope that, they're able to construct the roster around at least having him on there as the special teams captain again.
Yeah, agreed. Want to shout out some people here in the chat. We got Vergen which we'll get to his question in a moment. We got Ali Howard always here, Daniel Berry, frequent member of these live streams. We got Captain Spartan, good to hear from you. Schoolhouse Rocks is here, nice to hear from you, man. And so we'll go to the questions from Vergen has any players had surgery yet, like Broderick Jones, Ryan Watts? It seems like he had a neck procedure. He posted that on Instagram. It was hard to tell the exact timeline, but it seems like that's happened postseason. Anything else that's happened I'm not aware of, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not aware of it either, and it'll be interesting to see if Omar Khan, especially maybe in the media session before the podium session, is asked about any guys maybe potentially coming off surgeries that might not be available, say, by the start of OTAs. That's kind of the thing. And Mike Tomlin at his end of season press conference, he obviously dances around that and says, I don't know who's doing what, as far as surgery this early on in the off season there. And that stuff usually tends to come out via pictures on Instagram, somebody who was it? Calvin Austin. I just going back through my head, some of these guys over the years that you say, oh, he had surgery, kind of thing. I have not heard, I don't think, anything other than Ryan Watts, and obviously it would be a good question about Broderick Jones because of kind of him being banged up. Maybe Omar Khan will be asked that at some point tomorrow.
Right, and there could be, of course, guys are playing hurt through injuries, and so those guys could always have procedures after the season. But besides Watts, I couldn't tell you any player that we believe has had surgery, although it would not be shocking if a couple players did go under the knife after probably fighting through something. Maybe Michael Pruitt had a cleanup because he had that knee injury bugging him throughout the season. But again, we're just speculating beyond Ryan Watts. And Kay Cabrera apologized. He says, seems like I'm probably in the wrong. My apologies. Think I misunderstood what you were saying. All good. Nope, no problems. We appreciate the super chat and you hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was listening to the podcast earlier today. Just things like with the new tight end per se with him. He did not log, I don't think, any special team snaps in the last. Now, he did spend all of last season on the Denver Broncos practice squad. So he obviously didn't see any action on the field with the Broncos, but the 2 years prior to that logged 0 special team snaps. And when you got a guy like Donald Parham, who I'm talking about, by the way, who just signed that 1-year contract, when you're talking about a backup tight end at the bottom of the roster being signed this part of the offseason to a veteran benefit contract, one of the first things you should look at, in my opinion, is how that player contributed on special teams. And even the 2 years prior to him playing his final 2 seasons with the Rams, the Chargers. Was it Rams or Chargers? Was the fact that even those special team snaps, didn't you say that he only mostly played wing on the punt block team?
It was listed as field goal block team or field goal protect team, which I assume he was a wing or, whatever, left tackle, but he wasn't covering kicks or punts or anything like that.
Right. And, that gives you some pause for concern, because if you're going to be a number 3 or number 4 tight end on the Steelers roster in 2025, those guys are asked to play special teams, more times than not.
Right. Even Pruitt did a little bit of that this year, despite older and not a lot of mobility. A little bit of up work on kick return team, even a little bit of right wing on punt coverage team. So we'll see. But Parham, as we talked about, no risk, interesting guy, got some NFL production, good size, so worth a flyer on. John Pennington says, hello, Dave and Alex. Are you guys concerned about Tomlin not wanting to throw the ball in the middle of the field, and by not throwing in that area, hurt any receiver from signing with the team? I don't think it's going to hurt any receiver from signing with the team. Money's what it's going to largely come down to. Now, that comment that John makes is coming from kind of a word of mouth from Mark Cabali, who had mentioned that as his, apparently it was told to him at some point by Tomlin of why they don't throw over the middle of the field because of the increased risk in turnovers, which seems accurate. We had our Clayton Eckert look into that, see if that was true, and it seemed to generally be true that throwing over the middle does lead to more turnovers as opposed to outside the numbers. I think it speaks to an overall conservative offense and mindset of protect the ball, and I can understand the point and why Tomlin has that philosophy of leaning on the strength of his defense. And if they don't turn the ball over, Pittsburgh almost always wins, and when they turn the ball over even once, they have a pretty poor overall record. But yeah, I think the concern would be about just an offense that does not feel open enough to win in 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, but you hate to see, and specifically beyond the 10-yard part, right? I mean, you just, year after year, it does get tiresome of looking at the passing charts and looking at the lack of, not just talking about in between the hash marks, because that's such a small area of the field on the NFL field compared to a college field where the hash marks are. But even if you were to transpose the college hash marks over to an NFL passing chart, it is tiresome looking at that year after year.
I get that for sure. I do think Pittsburgh, at least Russell Wilson, threw over the middle more than quarterbacks in this Steelers offense has done in recent years. I thought Calvin Austin made most of his plays over the middle. Freiermuth probably should have been used vertically and downfield more often, but he made a lot of hay between the numbers as well. So I did feel like that ticked up to some degree this season.
I mean, when's the last time you saw like a traditional dagger get completed in timing with the Steelers offense, Yeah,
I feel like the Todd Haley days or something like that. So point taken overall, and I get the overall concern there. But I don't think it'll prevent the receiver, especially number 2, is going to play on the outside more from signing with Pittsburgh if the money's right.
Agreed.
Let's see, what else do we have here? About a half hour left. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Also, we're going to have live tracking of combine weigh-ins and testing, the 40 time, the vert, all those kinds of things. We'll have a spreadsheet posted each day that'll be tracking those things easily for you guys who might be at work, can't watch the combine, whatever the case is, don't want to hunt for it. We'll provide that for you guys on the site.
I still wish they did that early in the morning. I know you don't, but you like the afternoon sessions since they've switched to that. But I do wonder if that plays into because of the time of day and all like that, with some of these guys not doing some of these drills, especially when it gets to what's the one that they usually leave out at the end,
like the 3-cone and short shuttles. No one does anymore.
Specifically the 3-cone. Some of them do, but I mean, it's just, you have with each position group, it seems like now there's only like, I don't know, 10 guys maybe that do it, do both of them in each position group. I miss the old days of not having a lot of those DNPs in there,
I think part of that is so many guys focus on the 40. That's all they train pre-combine, and then post-combine they'll say, okay, I'll work on agility stuff for my pro day. And I think that's kind of where that trend is stemming from. Yeah, I mean, the morning is nice because it kind of gets done a little bit sooner and guys are a little bit fresher. They tried it at night that one year, which I definitely did not like. That was way too late. So maybe a happy middle ground. I just want Mike Mayock back. I love Daniel Jeremiah, but man, I miss the days of Mayock on NFL Network.
Too bad they can't have both of them, because I think Jeremiah does do a great job. He's highly knowledgeable on these guys for sure.
All right, Bucket Bros says, does Larry O make the cut? If so, do you guys envision him in a rotational role instead of a penciled-in starter? Dave, you wrote about this, I think, last week, about decision time is coming for Larry Ogunjobi. What's kind of your feel? Got an option roster bonus due here in just about 2.5 weeks, so what's your gut telling you on Larry Ogunjobi?
Yeah, that's it's definitely for why I wrote about it, because it is an interesting decision, and it's not like this team is cap crunch. But on top of it, though, you do have a $3 million roster bonus that is due coming up here on the 15th, and then once you pay that, that's gone, and that's almost half of what he's scheduled to earn in 2025, right? Because he's on the book for $7 million. $3 million of that has to be decided upon by March 15th. My gut, and I went into when writing about it just last week in that post that I did about there is, I could listen to several arguments because of the fact that, there's not much depth on this defensive line when it comes to experience beyond guys like Keanu Benton, beyond guys obviously like Cam Hayward at this point here. But on the flip side, is the guy worth the money? And how many of you listening to this want to see Larry Ogunjobi back out there for another 300 to 400 snaps, specifically against the run? He's older. I think he's a guy that at this point of his career, as history has shown, he's probably going to miss a game or two at a minimum throughout the season. And you can't just look at it that we need bodies out there, and he's an experienced body, and he only cost $7 million. That's the wrong way, in my opinion, to build a roster. My gut tells me that they'll look at this thing over the course of the next week, and I'm expecting them to cut him. But will I be shocked if they don't carry him? Because he is probably I wouldn't say, as far as his leadership goes, he's not a very talkative guy, and I think he's more of a guy from what I take during practice that would much rather lead by example. And I think there is some value within that, but at its core, is Larry Ogunjobi worth $7 million? And my short answer to that would be no, and I'm expecting them to part ways with him. But on the flip side, if we get to March 15th and that, they haven't done that, I think maybe what they're looking to do is maybe if they can sign a defensive lineman in that first 24 to 48 hours of free agency, with his roster bonus being due a few days later, maybe you sign a guy and then cut Larry Ogunjobi after the start of the new league year.
Yeah, that's basically my read. I think he'll be cut. I'm not going to write that in pen, but I I've been heavily trending towards that. You just look at the diminished play, his salary, the deep D-line class, potentially could sign a free agent. It just makes the most amount of sense to me. I kind of compare it to like he's this year's Mason Cole, where it's not super slam dunk obvious. Probably was a little bit more obvious for Cole than it was for Ogunjobi. Maybe Patrick Peterson's a little better comparison there, but older player, declining, decent salary, not huge, but a decent chunk of change there for a starter. I think he'll be cut. If he were to stay, I don't think he'll be in a starter capacity. He really lost a lot of snaps this year in sub package to Keanu Benton. So he also missed a little bit of time as well. Ogunjobi did 2 games with that groin injury, but it'll be more of a situational kind of strong backup rotational role. I think would be the case for Ogunjobi.
Mostly slanted to pass rush too, right?
Well, frankly, I think it'd be a lot of base end type of stuff for him to kind of get some snaps out there just to get him on the field. Because I think in sub package, it's going to be a lot of Hayward, a lot of Benton, and then hopefully you add some pass rush juice with a rookie. But I mean, yeah, it would be. If
your directive this offseason for Mark Rooney II was to get better against the run, then you don't want Larry Ogunjobi on the field as often. Would be my take from it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that's why they're going to cut him, because I just don't think it's worth it overall. I'm just trying to game out what happens if he stays. It would be a backup role, which would involve probably some rotational sub-package, like a number 4 rusher there, and maybe a Loudermilk type of role as a base end, maybe a backup there.
And here's the thing: if you cut, if $7 million's too much for a player like Larry Ogunjobi, and you cut him, then by default you got to cut Cole Holcomb at $6 million, right?
Unless you can try to work out some sort of restructure. Not entirely sure what that would look like, but
he would have to go down to what he made last year on that split salary, which was what, $3 million or something like that last year. Well, you'd have to, and I imagine those conversations with us being right at Wednesday, I think it's 2 weeks till the start of the new league year. I would imagine a lot of those conversations have been had or will be had probably by the end of this week about, look, if you want to stay on the roster, this is what you're going to have to take. And very rarely, though, do you see flat out salary cuts of players to stay on the roster. I mean, it has happened. It's just you don't see it very often with the Steelers. Now, the thing about the thing last year is he was injured, and you went to him and said, look, the only way we can keep you around is if you change the split language of your contract, which he did, and that's why he cost less. But he never played a snap for you last season, and that ended up being just cash that you really just threw away that way. I do wonder if you see, here's something I thought about, and I don't mean to change the subject, because I know the question was about Larry Ogunjobi, but I couldn't help but think, because Keanu Neal just announced he retired recently, and remember the situation with him when he was cut. It came after the start of the new league year, and he was given the failed physical designation. So I part of me kind of wonders, and I do realize that they opened up the 21-day window on Holcomb late in the 2024 season, but obviously he never made it back to the roster. I do wonder if they got a good sense of where he's at right now, and if maybe because you can't do that until after the start of the new league year with the player. I almost wonder if Cole Holcomb might end up being failed physical designation here after right after the start of the new league year, and then it's up to him whether or not he can find work and whether or not he wants to file for that injury benefit or not, like Keanu Neal did.
I was going to ask, would that allow him to do that injury clawback? Okay.
Right.
So that's actually a really good idea. I hadn't even thought about that. So thank you for mentioning that. That makes a lot of sense to go that route for him and the team. Kind of the best case of a difficult situation with that terrible injury.
Right. Make sure, though, that I note that as a potential forthcoming salary cap charge and not get blindsided like it almost was kind of because I had to backtrack and kind of figure out, because remember they had that amount hit. I forget what time of year, whenever the post I wrote about is when I found out about it, and I had to backtrack, and I finally figured out that it was due to him filing that injury benefit, Keanu Neal, that is, with that. So don't be surprised. I'm not saying that that's the route that they're going to take here, but it wouldn't. Don't be surprised if right after the first of the new league year here in a couple of weeks, if you see Cole Holcomb cut with failed physical designation. It would make sense if they did go that route. If he's not 100% healthy, if they can't agree him to lower his base salary.
Agree. Great point by you. And especially if you re-sign Landon Roberts, there's just no way you can justify Cole Holcomb at really any salary because just not a role for him at that point.
Right, and they might be waiting on that aspect of it as well too, with the Landon Roberts. Finally get the ink dry on that deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you probably want to hold on to Holcomb until Roberts' situation is known, and then once you do that, you probably then cut Holcomb post new league year with failed physical. That's actually, I think, probably a good chance of how it's going to go. All right, we'll go back to the questions here. MJB, do you guys think Walter Nolan is a fit for the Steelers? To me, he seems more like a 4-3 guy. That is like the one defensive line prospect I've not just gotten really any good sense of. I know you've watched him. I know you like him, Dave, so I'll defer to you. Does Nolan fit Pittsburgh's scheme?
I think he fits whatever scheme you want to put him in. And yeah, I think he would make a great 4-3 defensive tackle for sure. The question is how much further can he move out from over the nose and all like that? But I mean, from the snaps that I have seen, I think he can function a little bit further out from center for sure. He is a little. I'm going to be interested to see the arm length on him now. So we'll have these measurables on these guys here pretty soon. Now, I think NFL.com, at least on their combine page, list him at 6'3". What did he measure in at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I was going to ask. Don't we already have measurements on him?
I think we do.
You can look it up here. It's a little harder for me to do so streaming this live. So his arm length should be known. His height should be known. There was sometimes discrepancies between Combine and Senior Bowl by a tiny bit, but it's going to be negligible if there are anything, a quarter inch, eighth of an inch or so. So if you have that, Dave, in terms of his weigh-in, that'll be important information.
6'3" and a quarter, 293, 9.25 inch hands, 33-inch arms.
That fits. I mean, from a baseline standpoint, just looking at those numbers in a vacuum, those check the boxes.
Yeah, I think you'd like him a little bit taller, 6'4", maybe a full inch taller. But if you're asking me where he probably fits best scheme-wise, it would probably be 4-3. But I think he can play, and look, it's not like the Steelers run a lot of, a ton of base, right?
It was their fewest ever in the last decade in terms of their base rate this year. Lines have blurred to an extent between, base or even fronts, odd fronts. How tall, this might sound random, how tall was DeMarvin Leal coming out of A&M? What was his height? You can look that up.
Let me see real quick.
Because you're right. Typically, they will sacrifice some length for height in terms of alignment. Loudermilk was stubbier arm length. Logan Lee, stubbier arm length, but they were tall. They were 6'5", 6'6", close to 300 pounds. And so the team does seem to care about height a little bit more than actual arm length.
DeMarvin Lee looks like 6'4".
Was it 6'4" on the nose?
That's what the NFL.com page.
Yeah, they can round that sometimes. If we can get maybe Draft Scout or just the official weigh-in.
Well, that was what, 2023 with him?
22.
Oh, was it 22 with him?
Yeah, that was the Pickens, Leal, Austin.
Pulling up our sheets right now on him, and Leal was 6'3", 7/8".
Okay, now he was that tweener type, but a little bit shorter. But that is kind of proof they've taken one guy they viewed to be a defensive end who was a little bit shorter. That may work in Nolan's favor. You're probably right. He's on maybe that very edge of like the shortest they would go to draft somebody. That's kind of why I've looked at Derek Harmon a little bit more. I think it's going to be closer to that 6'5" mark. But you don't want to pass on a guy just because of that nitpicking over the height. But we know this team does seem to have some thresholds that we adhere to when we try to predict who will become a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Let me see real quick what they had his snaps at.
For Nolan?
Yeah, for Nolan at gap wise and all like that.
Yeah, was he more of a B gap player? Is he over tackle? I know we can effort that here pretty quickly.
Let's see real quick here.
While you do that, I'll do one last shout out to like the stream and subscribe, and you can listen back to this. Will be an archived version of this on the site a little bit later tonight.
Last year at Ole Miss, 19 in the A gap, 432 in the B gap.
How many over tackle?
103.
Okay, so that'd be basically his role in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Again, you're playing a lot of 3-tech in Pittsburgh, a little bit of 4-eye in base, and so that kind of matches.
Right, and let's see, 2023 at Texas A&M, 13 in A gap, 152 B gap, 89 over the tackle, and then in 2022 at A&M, 50 in A gap, 199 in B gap, and looks like 14 over the tackle. As far as outside the tackle snaps, only 28 last year at Ole Miss, but in 2023, and I have not gone into his A&M tape much of any, but at A&M in 2023, Nolan logged 110 snaps outside.
It is kind of Liao shades of a little bit of a tweener. You know, it's kind of bounced between end and edge, which is sort of what Liao did at A&M. So I don't want to say he's the same guy because that just, it's painting with too broad of a brush, but it is kind of a similar bio, at least. What do you think?
Look, 4-3 teams will definitely have interest in Walter Nolan, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just quickly, last point. If you had to guess, I don't mean to put you on the spot. What do you think he runs, Walter Nolan? What do you think is maybe 40-yard dash? Just to put a clean, notable number on it.
Oh, Lord.
4 something? Or do you think it'll be a 5, sub 5 second guy? Or
let me look back to
that. I didn't know how great of a field you got.
See if I can get a feel for maybe what guys ran last year of that group. And because
I do think a guy like Harmon is not going to run especially well. His 10 split might be decent. I think his 40 time is going to be 5+. But you watch the tape and you see a guy that's strong and powerful, can rush the passer, can play up and down the line, good production, transferred to Oregon and had pretty immediate success in that odd front.
Aurora ran last year 4.89. Mason Smith ran 5.01.
Yeah, they're getting freaky.
Yeah, I have to think that he's going to run sub 5.
Sub 5, so that 4.9-ish
range.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably. I'll tell you what. I'll take a shot. 4.94 for Nolan.
4.94. Mark it down for Walter Nolan. We'll check it and compare.
Let's see how close I come to that.
Maybe do that for the Wednesday show. Play a little game of what will he run. But anyway, I know we kind of
he's explosive. His 10 split ought to be good. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
And that's the most important thing is the 10 split as opposed to the full 40-yard dash. All right, let's go back to the questions here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Captain Spartan says, even though this is a deep running back class, do you think the Steelers will probably get trigger happy and take one in the 3rd round? I wouldn't really necessarily call that trigger happy. I think for deep classes, 3rd round is acceptable. You don't want to wait too long because then depth may run out. It kind of happened at receiver last year for Pittsburgh, waiting into the 3rd round. Not that it was the wrong move, but you're kind of left with a smaller, shallower pool at that point. So I think 2nd to 4th round, assuming Najee leaves, is kind of the range I'll leave it as, is where I think Pittsburgh will select a running back.
I think that's fair expectation, round range.
Trying to pin it to one particular round can be tough to do. I mean, I think you kind of put it in buckets of early, mid, late, not at all is kind of the way I try to talk about where the team will draft because it can be hard to do, especially until we get some more data on pro day tracking and that type of stuff that's going to kind of give us a clearer path to what positions and what people Pittsburgh is showing the most amount of interest in. Mm-hmm. All right, next question will come from Whippled18GT. If able to trade for top talent such as Garrett Wilson, do you think he would add enough value to team to give a first rounder that could be used to draft a talented D-line player? I think he's trying to ask, would trading Garrett Wilson reduce the need for receiver enough that Pittsburgh could use a first rounder on, say, a defensive lineman? Yes, to that. I think really they sign any veteran free agent to good money, that's going to probably eliminate drafting a receiver in the first round.
Absolutely. If you add anybody that's deemed a much better compliment to what they had last year to George Pickens, and especially on the heels of spending an early-ish draft pick last year with Roman Wilson there. Now I still expect them to draft a wide receiver at some point. But definitely would take the onus off of drafting one early for sure.
Especially if it's a Garrett Wilson type, and heck, you may not have a first-round pick if you're trading for Garrett Wilson because it might cost a lot to get that guy. But point and question taken. BA says, He says, I am missing something here. With the limitations in Stafford's game as far as mobility, the Steelers' issues at left tackle, Jones is a mess, Bautanu, an NFL unknown. Why is this potential marriage a match? The Steelers are destined to be the Spider-Man pointing meme at quarterback. This is why it's so damaging to miss in the draft at quarterback. Point taken on missing at quarterback. It certainly usually sets you back or stagnates you in Pittsburgh in the latter camp right now. Do we make too much out of mobility? As much as Mike Tomlin has talked about it, do we focus on that too much? And I say that broadly as fans in general, not just you and I.
Well, I think you got to take what comes out. Look, we could sit here all day and talk about what we would do, but and some people say, well, we do care about that. But I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds what I would do or what you would do, because if based on what we think the team's going to do, and why spend a lot of the breath talking about what we would do if we truly deep down don't believe that's going to happen. And I guess that kind of just rolls back to, man, how many times has Mike Tomlin been asked over the last couple of years about how important quarterback mobility and basically I understand what the listener's question is here is it doesn't add up, at least from what's coming out of the mouth of the team, especially when it comes to Mike Tomlin quarterback mobility, especially when you're talking about quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, because those guys are not mobile,
But, I mean, Tomlin values it. He sees it. He faces Lamar twice a year. I get that. But he's also, had Russell Wilson enter the 2024 season starting over Justin Fields. He then pivoted to Russ mid-season. Fields, the much more mobile quarterback. He went to Russ because I assume he thought he was a better quarterback and passer overall. So
then he should have added a but in there,
I just think it's just not black and white. You value quarterback mobility, but if the other quarterback is just simply a better thrower from the pocket, which is the main responsibility of playing quarterback, then you just go with that guy instead, and you sacrifice some mobility to have a much better passer.
Right, and how much of mobility might, to our own fault or to my own fault, how much might mobility be be related to mobility within the pocket?
Yeah, I've talked about moving in the pocket is just as important.
Look at Joe Burrow,
Right. That can be just as important as outside the pocket, how well you can navigate inside a pocket, which Russ struggles at, and you felt the consequence to that. So mobility can mean different things. That's a really good point.
Right, and to our own fault, maybe we're thinking mobility is just getting on a hoof and running with the football.
Well, I think when Tomlin's talked about that, that's kind of what he's referenced. He's not really talking about inside the pocket.
Yeah, I would like to think that, but it'd be fun to hear him quantify it a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think it's usually in reference to the Lamars of the world, the Josh Allens of the world, and I think that's safe to assume that. But I mean, I think there's a balance. Mobility is important. It's more important. You want a quarterback who can move a bit. But if there's a guy that's just simply a great pocket passer, you take him over the decent quarterback who's more mobile because more plays are being made from the pocket than outside the pocket.
Especially if he can navigate the pocket like Joe Burrow does.
Yeah, and get the ball out quick. That can deal with a lot of mobility issues if you get the ball out in 2.5 seconds and know where to go with the football. Good question, though, BA. That dude, KJ16. Hey, Dave Alex, was listening to the earlier podcast, and Dave talked about the value of someone like Tyler Warren. Say a scenario of Genty and Warren both on the board. Which direction do you go? Dave, if you had to choose between Genty and Warren, What's your path?
Yeah, you know what way if forced to just choose in between those two guys, I'm going with Warren. I just, my thoughts on running back fungibility and all like that. And look, Genty is an explosive back, and he's going to be the first back. Should be the first back off the board this year. But the things Tyler Warren can do in an offense for you and all like that. I would have to be promised that running back can deliver X amount of explosive plays on the ground, if I'm going to agree to. And that's the only way I could see the Steelers going this year. If indeed they did go with Genty, it would be because they think that they have a guy almost like a Gibbs that can finally deliver it, because it is stealing in the running game. As I say time and time again, if you can get a guy like Derrick Henry, and they're two built, backs built entirely different in Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. But what did those two guys do this past season? They delivered the explosive runs. They delivered those kind of runs that end up in the end zone too. Those kind of things there. But I mean, if you're forcing me right now to pick in between the two, I would go Warren.
I'll go Genty easily in my mind. Better player, better prospect. I can get him more touches. My first round pick. Genty can touch the ball probably 250 times this year. Warren's going to catch how many balls? 30, 35, 40 on the high end of things. And so for a run-heavy offense, Genty being the better back, not that I'm saying that would be 100% my pick, but between those two options, I think I'm taking Genty all day.
Okay.
Next question, we'll try to run through these things a little bit quicker for the last couple of minutes. Captain Spartan 04, where do y'all rank Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, Darius Alexander, and Ty Robinson? Still doesn't sound like you guys have watched TJ Sanders or Omar Norman Lott yet. We've done reports on all those guys. I don't know if Dave and I have watched specifically a lot of Sanders or Norman Lott yet. I don't know if I'll do rankings right close to the draft when I've kind of got all the information out there and watch as many guys as possible. Harmon, I think for me, would still be number one. I don't know who I would choose between Nolan and Alexander. Robinson probably in that third tier, day three type of guy. He's a loose configuration right now for me.
Yeah, I would, thanks to the work that Alex has done on Harmon, I think I'd rank Harmon slightly above Nolan right now between those two. I have not watched Sanders deep yet. Who else did he ask about?
Omar Norman Lott, which I believe is the Tennessee kid.
Yeah, isn't he undersized?
I don't know his measurables off the top of my head. We have the report on him on the site, but I did not write it.
Let me see if I got. I think he's listed at 6'1", 295, ain't he?
If he is, then that's more interior nose tackle type stuff there.
Yeah, I haven't watched him yet.
Jason Williams has two questions we'll go through. Best D-line that will fit the mode of the Steelers, like Kenneth from Michigan. Needs someone to be able to tackle Derrick Henry. Thoughts? Yeah, they got to get more physical, got to get stronger, better up front, no question. Grant makes a lot of sense. I still think Derek Harmon fits as well.
Mm-hmm.
Other question, and Dave, you can kind of give just a brief overview with a couple minutes we have left. He says, Dave, can you explain what dead money means and how it affects the salary cap?
All right, dead money, think of it this way. Let's say you have a 3-year contract that you give a player, and let's say you gave him a nice even round signing bonus of $15 million. Well, if that's a 3-year contract and it's a $15 million signing bonus, you're allowed to prorate that for cap purposes over those 3 years. So what's 15 divided by 3? That's $5 million in each of the years. And let's say after the first year of that contract, you decide to cut or trade the player. You still have you've already accounted for $5 million of that $15 million prorated salary cap. Signing bonus there. So you still have 2 years of proration that have to come due. Now, if you cut the player before June 1st, all of that remaining $10 million in prorated money comes due in the second year, the year that you're cutting him there. Whereas if you decide to make him a post-June 1st cut, you would be allowed to only be charged $5 million for that current year, and the other $5 million remaining of the proration would defer over to the final year of the deal. And that's how it impacts your dead money. It's considered dead because that's prorated money that you haven't accounted for yet, and thus it's got to, it accelerates either into the year that you're into, if it's pre-June 1st, or if it's after June 1st, the already on the books amount that's already prorated stays on the books for that year, and whatever's left, whether it be 2-3 years, whatever proration, then defer, comes, all accelerates into the following year. Did I describe that good enough?
Jason, you can let us know, but I think you broke it down pretty well. So hopefully that can fill you in, and that'll become a pretty common term with a lot of cuts coming up here before free agency kicks off.
And also you can have dead money too, say they gave, say they picked up this roster bonus for Larry Ogunjobi, and then they decide to cut him. All right. Later on in the off season. Well, that $3 million you've already paid him, so that becomes dead as well too. More times than not, you're looking at dead money related to signing bonus, but there are instances where dead money could be maybe a roster bonus you already paid a guy, and you'll see the Steelers have dead money like that with their undrafted guys, right? With the signing bonuses that they give them, or and it does happen, occasionally with times where you picked up around the league where you pick up a roster bonus, but you decide to part ways with the guy, and you already paid that roster bonus out, so that becomes dead money.
Yeah, good point there. That dude, KJ16, asking about, Rooney wanting the backup to be similar to the starter. If they were to sign Justin Fields, could Trey Lance be in the running? Potentially. I think somebody with a bit more NFL experience would be preferable for Pittsburgh. They like to have guys that have played on Sunday more than Lance. I think a Snoop Huntley would make sense, but I'll have my wish list of quarterback names, and you'll get a good sense of that then. But something probably similar to that, sure, that dude.
Yeah, and you're going to talk about minimum salary related to those kind of guys.
Right. John Pennington, should the team cut Montravius Adams and Loudermilk also? Loudermilk's a pending free agent, and so it's a re-sign, or he'll go somewhere else. I think he'd carry Adams to at least training camp.
Yeah, especially if you got we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's not like you got a huge cash investment in Montravius. What is it, $2.5 million? What is he on the books for this year, Montravius? And none of it's guaranteed right now. He's scheduled to earn $2.25 million base salary. So even if you cut him, the roster displacement would be, what's the bottom salary? Almost $900,000. Mm-hmm. So you would technically save around, as far as cap space goes. The big issue is there if he was to get injured or something like that and have to go on IR. But even so, you're talking about $2.25 million. So I think Montravius Adams more than likely survives the start of the new league year. You bring him to camp, you see how things play out, see how injuries play out, see how these young kids come along, and then make the decision closer to week 1 of the season with Montravius.
Agreed, especially for a team with $60 million in cap space. They don't have to try to pinch pennies to create extra room. If they cut Ogunjobi, if Loudermilk hits free agency, you don't want to completely deplete your depth and what you have in the room, and so hold on to Adams. Jason Williams asking about why do people mock the receiver from Missouri. I was trying to combine the two. Don't we have a player like him in Calvin Austin? Personally, I think that would be a wasted pick at 21. That's referring to Luther Burden. Again, I've not studied him specifically, but just watching a lot of Missouri tape, I think he's a bigger guy, a stronger guy. He's not incredibly big, but he's kind of stout. I don't think he's the exact same guy as Calvin Austin. He's a little more James Washington-like, but more explosive, more versatile.
Did you see the screen pass breakdown that just hit? Who was it? One of these stat sites just had the percentage of screens of these top wide receivers, and I didn't realize that he had such a high percentage of screen passes.
Yeah, I knew the offense was pretty screen heavy. I have not seen that, so I don't know what the number is. I don't know if he's leading the pack in that. Probably up there, I'm sure. But he's also, he's run a route tree. I've seen him make plays elsewhere.
I was just, he's another one that I've got to get deeper into the film on. I'm going to see if I can find that. I have it in my list here somewhere. I know you feel the same way. There's like 20 tweets during the day that I wish I would have favorited to go back and look at. Let me see if I got it real quick here. Oh, here it is. It's from Football Insights. Career screen target percentage of the 2025 wide receiver prospects. If you're wanting to look at this, it's ball_insights on Twitter. It was a chart that he put up earlier today. Burden looks like, 26, maybe 25% and some change of career screen target percentage. And he's second only to Lane out of Virginia Tech.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't like to focus or talk about quarterback play too much as it relates to receiver. I think that's a lot of excuse making, but that if you go back and watch that Missouri tape, it was really tough to watch their quarterback Brady Cook, who I think had some injuries this year, and so they probably did a lot of screen game to try to get some manufactured touches and just some high percentage plays. So I know some people have compared Burden to Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky last year, but just in my initial analysis, Burden is a lot more refined, and Corley was just kind of like a big space running back who had no route tree at all, and I think Burden is more developed.
Conversely, Higgins out of Iowa State is like 2.5% career screen target percentage in college.
Real quick, let's go through rapid fire, Dave. John Pennington, when do you give up on Leal? You can carry him to camp, but that's all the expectation should be.
Yeah, he better get on his horse. You like Alex said, you carry him the rest of the summer, and wouldn't be surprising to see him out the door.
Yeah, that neck injury, don't even know the whole status of that. Could he be a cut, failed physical guy if that neck injury didn't perk back up? Who knows? Captain Spartan, if we get comp picks for Dan Moore, Najee Harris, James Daniels, Dante Jackson, do you think it's enough draft capital to trade up for a quarterback next year? Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a will, there's a way. You can trade up, trade whatever you want for a quarterback. If you have the picks to do it, it's going to cost a lot, sure, but I don't think a lack of picks would prevent Pittsburgh from making the move if there was a quarterback they felt strongly enough about.
And here's the thing, too. I always caution people, don't count your compensatory picks before they hatch, because it's worked off the offset. And look, we expect the Steelers to be fairly busy in free agency, probably not as busy as probably most people are thinking. But are a lot of these gains and losses going to end up counteracting each other in the balance sheet? So don't. Just because you expect all these guys to go out the door and maybe sign some decent contracts, you got to remember about the contracts coming in via free agency and how that works in the whole balance system. And as of late, the Steelers haven't been that much plus in the compensatory pick value. So if you're expecting them to be have a busy free agency process, at least of guys more than that $5 to $6 million APY gain, there's a good chance that they come out of this offseason with and remember, compensatory picks awarded for what happens this offseason do not or won't be awarded for until the 2027 draft, right?
Be the 26 draft, would it not? Next year's draft, 2025 or 2026.
Next year's draft, sorry.
Yeah. Which could still be useful to trade up for that quarterback. I assume he's trying to say like next year type of thing. But yeah, I think because usually these things are first round picks, and so if you have first or second round pick, you can make that move up. Is it justified? It's risky, but I don't think the comp picks it'll help to make you feel better about, okay, we have some extra draft picks to still work with here. But if there's a quarterback you love, all bets are off. You go up there and get that guy.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that we're going to be talking about a third round compensatory for the Steelers to work with after this offseason.
Yeah.
It could, but I mean, it's hard to tell.
They signed 2 or 3 good money guys. It's going to start canceling out some of those losses pretty quickly. Thoughts on Darian Porter? It's a guy I really want to watch. How old is he? How fluid is he? I think he's going to run fast. He's big. He's long. Avatar type of corner. Former receiver. 3 picks this year for the Cyclones. But how fluid is he? As a high cut guy, certainly one of the intriguing names in this draft, Mike.
He's definitely going to be one to watch on the on-field backpedal drills that we talked about on the podcast earlier today.
Vegas, happy birthday to yourself and to your mother. Appreciate you being here, man. 2 other quick ones here, Dave. Jason Williams, he says, is he the only one excited about possibly getting Nick Chubb? The dude was a beast. We can still get another running back in the late rounds. I just think Chubb's got nothing left. And so, yes, it's true. It shouldn't preclude Pittsburgh from adding a running back in the draft. I just think Chubb is unfortunately done.
Yeah, I do as well, too. Cost of everything always plays into it as well, too. I would imagine they're, what the Steelers might be willing to pay him versus what maybe another team might be two different numbers, though. I'm not that excited about Nick Chubb
And
overall.
then we'll finish off with Still Cold. Do you think we need a sports psychologist for communication and confidence? Pittsburgh may have one. I imagine most teams do. I know there's not one listed on the team site, but I imagine there's somebody in that capacity. It just depends. It's hard to really say. Probably less so for communication. It's probably more of a confidence psychology sort of thing for individuals who might need help. But yeah, I think those are always useful things to explore that can help a particular player out.
Yeah, that'd be a great question for Omar Khan to have to answer.
Yeah, we'll see if he gets asked it tomorrow. So we're going to wrap things up. Went a little bit long, but appreciate you guys hanging out with us here in the off season. Enjoy the Combine. Be an archive version of this on Steelers Depot in just a little bit. Again, got Combine coverage for you guys, boots on the ground, and Dave and I recapping things and tracking things throughout the week. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. And Dave, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for doing what you do. And let's say, I guess the next time we do this will be right a couple of days. I guess the legal tampering period will be opening the next time we do this, right?
That'll be March 10th.
That sounds right, right?
Yeah, in my head here. So yeah, I think so. So we'll have a lot more to talk about probably by the next time we reconvene. So thank you guys so much for listening.
Peace and love, everybody. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.